Hello, beautiful. And what I really want to know is, what is good in your life today? I'm Kia, and this is another episode of the Female Veterans Podcast. Today, I have with me an amazing lady. She is a shipmate of mine, so you know how excited I get when I get fellow Navy on the show. So I'm super excited about that. But not only that, she does something really, really, really special, especially to me. She is the president and co-founder of Leashes of Valor. And we're going to find out much more about this during the interview. And you'll find out exactly why it's so special to me, especially as a dog lover. I have two of my own. They are my babies, and they are also my therapy animals, along with a rabbit. But we'll talk about that another time. Anyway, I am so excited to have you here, Danique. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk today.
Oh, great. Great. So I guess we'll just jump right into it. And I'll ask you my very first question. What made you join the military?
I was a post 9/11 joiner, so I was 21 years old when September 11th happened, and a pretty naive college girl living in Florida, living the great life. So it was a really hard reality check for me on the bigger concept in the world going on. And I saw a police officer actually protecting a synagogue, and I wanted to go into law enforcement because of that. Wow. I grew up in Germany, so it seemed very symbolic. And then the Navy promised me Master at Arms, so that's how I ended up joining the Navy branch. I almost did Marine Corps because a lot of my family was Marine Corps. But they wouldn't promise me that specific job in my contract. So that's how I faltered over to Navy. And I'm glad I did, actually. I really enjoyed it, and I met some amazing people through it. So I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't chosen that route.
Wow. I did the same thing. I chose Navy because they were going to guarantee me a job of hospital corpsman. So that's what I did in the Navy.
Yeah.
And eventually pharmacy. But yeah, I felt that. I was thinking of the Air Force, and just like the Marines, they wouldn't guarantee me a job. They were going to assign me. And I was like, no, I need to have some control over, I know I'm going to the military, but I need to have some control. So yeah, that's how I ended up in the Navy too. So I vibe with that. Tell me, what was boot camp like for you?
I actually had a pretty tough time in boot camp. Very upsetting for me to not have control over little things like brushing your teeth. Yeah. That was known as a privilege in boot camp. And those basic needs for me were very hard to break down on a permission level. So I basically started getting up before Reveille to brush my teeth because I just went to the head. And then got back in the rack, and then Reveille would happen, and then I didn't have to worry about it. So always good on circumventing the system early. And by the time I graduated, I was known as Candy Girl. I'm probably one of the few people who got fat in boot camp.
What?
I actually had to have my uniforms altered because I gained so much weight. And I always, for some reason, I'd watch and had to like catch up with my unit. And somehow magically would go into the NEX and get some Snickers, but I was eating my feelings, basically. So I gained a lot of weight in boot camp. I'm very athletic. I'm from an athletic family, and the exercise level in the Navy was not what I was used to. So yeah, I actually got chunky.
Wow, that's rare. That's rare.
But I mean, other than that, boot camp was a tough cookie. It was a hard pill to swallow on the pecking order of things. And at 21, how not mature an adult you really are. So it was a growing experience for sure.
Oh, I agree. Did you make a lot of close friends in boot camp?
One other one, because we ended up going in the same rate, she also became a Master at Arms. A lot of the other people were very in completely different industries and interests, and most of my division was straight out of high school. So there were only like 2 or 3 of us that were, above drinking age. So we kind of clicked together too.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually made 2 really good friends in boot camp, and they then went to core school with me afterwards. And we were at Great Lakes, so we went straight from boot camp to A school at Great Lakes on the other base, and from there, after during A school, one of the girls and I had a huge fight. She hooked up with a guy I liked, and then we became enemies. It's so silly when I think about it. and then the other friend of mine, we were good friends all through A school, and then when A school was done, we all tried to stay in Chicago. So another girl took the other girl's place in A school. So there was always 3 of us, me and 2 other girls for some reason. And then at the end, we all tried to stay in Chicago because it's the strictest base, or at least it was at that time. And we figured we had a shot to all be together if we chose that base on our dream sheet as number 1. And 2 out of the 3 of us, we got Chicago. I think the 3rd one might have put California. Just said she put
That's
Chicago.
really far away.
Right? And because she ended up going to Camp Pendleton. But we missed her, and it was really cool to just make those kinds of close bonds. And I made a bunch of girlfriends in boot camp. I will always shout out Sunny Woolsey because she saved my military career once. It's another story for another day. But she was my friend from boot camp, and she was at TPU on the base, and we got into some trouble, and she saved me. So being young and on your own for the first time can be quite an adventure. Did you have any adventures like that after boot camp when you were first, I guess, on regular active duty?
God, I mean, being a master at arms, we were kind of in our own little dysfunctional group, pretty separate from, I guess, the rest of the Navy experience, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody else wants anything to do with us. Not like we're any more respectable, honestly. It was kind of like Super Troopers. You have a whole bunch of 18-year-olds guns and all of a sudden put them in law enforcement. So I probably have worse stories of like on-duty time than off-duty time. I mean, apparently somebody gun-decked the carpool paperwork for a year because we were missing a vehicle that somebody must have gone off-roading and actually sank it in one of the retention ponds in Gordon. For a whole year, like we just magically had that thing appearing on paperwork being in, I don't know, motor pool and repair, but it was actually in a pond because during a drought, somebody saw the light bar sticking out, and that's how, the unit got caught.
Oh, no. Okay. Okay, that's a great story.
Those master at arms have their not so great moments too. Thankfully, it doesn't threaten national security too much.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, so what was active duty like for you aside of shenanigans?
Most of my active duty tour is actually really crappy. I had a really toxic first command that had some very recurring sexual assaults happen. So there was a lot of hazing and anything in that category. So the first 3 years were really rough.
Wow.
Academically, so like from making rank and all of those things, I did really great. So I made E5 in 18 months in.
Oh, wow.
But it was horrible. Absolutely horrible. I was suicidal at the first command for sure.
Oh my God. So it's interesting that you bring that up, right? Because everything that's going on right now, and we're seeing toxic commands come to the forefront, at least one that I can think of, Fort Hood. Yeah. Right. And so we're seeing people go missing. We're seeing bodies come up, and that's right on our United States soil. Actually, it's mind blowing to me. But we always know that there are some bases that are more toxic than others, right? And this is from the dawn of time. Okay, it just is what it is. But when you see this come to light and you see people just missing and bodies turning up and families wanting answers, and it's kept so quiet, it's so impactful when you start to see it hitting the news and you go, wow, here's another toxic base. I had this experience, or I had that experience, or I knew someone who was on this base and this happened to them. So tell me, what was your toxic base like?
It's interesting. So one of my best friends to this day actually is who I was stationed with there. It was aside, so the sexual assaults occurred by the senior enlisted in my chain of command. So they were basically the entire senior enlisted running security, which kind of didn't leave a lot of places to go report anything. Unfortunately, I was also assaulted in the barracks by a Marine, but he was from another command. And so then you get those answers like, we're in a time of war, because like the invasion just started. So they say, you know, he has a critical role, like you need to make this go away. So it's that value system on one DD-214 being more important than another, basically. So this person is more valuable than this person, because that's how it started being portrayed. So these things then start spiraling. So that assault then obviously made me more vulnerable to the chain of command, which then triggered the senior enlisted club to start those things. And that almost lasted the entire 3 years. And I mean, you have to think of scenarios like barracks access. If it's your chain of command, like they're allowed to do a health and comfort, you know, like, so there's a lot of very blurred lines and a very interesting relationship to consent, and what people can withhold or control with in order to achieve, you know, somebody's compliance, putting it politely. So yeah, 3 years of that. And I actually mustered out early, so I got to phone muster before I left with the command master chief after I tried to report. But the answer was something close to, you know, you shouldn't mess with the chief's mess. So it's an interesting unlearning that happens after you leave the military on, you know, finding your value again.
So you tried to report. The word tried really stuck out to me. And I'm trying to wrap my mind around it, because you said a lot of things just then. And the first thing that comes to my mind, besides not really being able to fully report because you tried to report, is, and then the feelings of being less valuable of a sailor than another just because it's wartime. And then there's all these assaults happening, and they're happening within your chain of command, and you're the police. So it's really kind of mind-blowing. It never gets easier for me to hear. It's far too common for me to hear, but it's never gets easier when you're talking to the police. And not only are the assaults being perpetrated by the police, you are also a police person, and you're assaulted and you don't even get justice. It's appalling. So I just had to say that, number one. And number two, can you elaborate on how you tried to report and what that story is?
So the final reporting with the command master chief, I had threatening voice messages from the E9 in my chain of command, basically trying to order me to come over to his residence, and they were pretty explicit. I wasn't going to have to fill in a lot of blanks. And this is 2005. So this is before the iPhone came out. So let's also be realistic on our capacities. Just want to remind everybody that this is way before fancy tech like now. So I played the command master chief those voicemails, and basically it was like asking to get out from under this guy's thumb, because he literally controlled everything from medical to meals to, I mean, you know, they have economic control over you, promotions, schooling, picking my next orders. So I was basically just begging to get out from under him. Like, I don't really want to report. Like, I just want to give you enough evidence to show you that you need to move me. And they wouldn't. But he did let me phone muster until my orders came through.
So you couldn't move to another division?
There was nowhere else to go. I was in Charleston, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So there weren't really any other commands that would accommodate me unless I basically wanted to tank my career. You know, once you get out of your rate, if you go hand out basketballs at, you know, the gym or MWR or something, you're just sinking your career. So you kind of start calculating what's worth it.
My God, the choices. These are my options, you know, and I'm the survivor. You know what else really troubles me? Is that I know for some people, 2005 seems like a long time ago, but to me, it really doesn't.
I know.
And this was just like yesterday, in my opinion. And this is not like 1970. You know what I mean? Like, this is the 21st century. Okay. And women have been serving since what, the 30s to the 40s. So, in some capacity, right? And we're still no better. Still no better. So when I was in, and I'm sure it was like this for you and probably everybody, we had to do all this training on sexual harassment and all of these things, right? Like, so why did we do all that training? Like, really?
I think we're training on the wrong thing, because I don't think I didn't take it serious, and I'd already been assaulted. Like, at that point, it was ironic, I think. Is that what you would call it? Like, oh, that's cute.
How did you feel as an officer knowing that all these assaults were happening on the base?
So that took me a long time to find a term for, and it's called moral injury. It's institutional betrayal.
Yes.
So that, you know, you put this, I wanted to be a cop. Like, I joined the Navy, you know, like, it felt like this is what I asked for. This is what I'm getting. Am I getting what I asked for? Or did I make the wrong choice? Like, is this the price I have to pay to be in that club? So it was a tough one to, I call it forgiving the uniform. Like, I had to become reacquainted with some semblance of respect for it, you know, like that pretty much goes out the window.
Absolutely.
I mean, these assaults happen while I'm in camis with my Kevlar on, with my gun belt on. Like, you can exert control over people. That doesn't have to be physical violence at all.
Oh my God. I absolutely hate that happened to you. It's horrifying. It just never ceases to amaze me how we as women, excuse me, we as women join the military and we put our lives on the line just like everyone else, knowing what we're getting into, and never for a moment do we think that we expect that, you know, you could get injured or die during wartime from the enemy, right? Mm-hmm. But never do we expect that the enemy is our brother at arms. You don't go into the military thinking that you could potentially be at danger by someone who's supposed to have your back, or supposed to be looking out for you, or be a mentor, or, you know, someone that you can trust and look up to. You never go in. I certainly did not go in thinking that at all. And it's one of the reasons why I do this show, so that when women or young girls are considering a career in the military, that they have a resource where they can hear all the stories, good and bad, and make an educated decision. Because this is shocking and horrifying, but people need to know that it happens. It's real. So I just want to, before we go any further, I want to thank you for sharing your story because it's powerful.
Thank you.
It's powerful. So, in order to cope after this assault happened and you wanted to report, but you were not permitted to report because this guy's career was so valuable, right? How did you get through each day until you had to leave? Did you have to come in contact with this person anymore, or?
So the assault with the Marine who was stationed in a different unit than he lived in the barracks next door. So I was just desperately trying to move out of the barracks. Like, I don't want to be neighbors because people in the barracks talk. They definitely tell the narrative completely different. So there's a lot of, victim shaming in any direction, of alcohol to clothes to whatever. But they wouldn't let me move out because we were all E3s at the time. And, usually it's like E5 and above, you can move off base. So I emailed the Oprah show.
No, you didn't.
They called the command and asked, what's going on? I said, I wrote basically I was assaulted and they won't let me move off base. And somehow I want to make noise. And they called the command. I got called in front of the old man, the captain of the base, got my ass handed to me.
I bet you did.
But with that came a chit that got me off base with BAH.
Super worth it.
Yep, totally.
How brave were you? And Oprah too, though. I love that it was Oprah.
Like,
first of all, who doesn't love Oprah?
I mean, this is like, this was 03. So, she was a big deal. Like, she was still on.
Yes. Well,
but like today,
she's always going to be a big deal. But seriously, that's huge. And you know what I love? Shout out to the Oprah show, meanwhile.
They did the research, man. They called the command.
They called the command. Like, they legit called the command. And without that call, you might have been stuck in that base.
Oh, yeah. Meaning my chain of command had the barracks keys. So I also had then the senior leadership started showing up in the middle of the night in my room saying, you need to come in we need a female to search somebody we apprehended. Like, super bullshit stories, but
wow.
Your E9 or your LT, shouldn't just be coming into your bedroom, into
your home, into your safe space.
Yeah, but they have keys. Like, that's their job, to have keys for health and comfort.
Right. Oh my God. I mean, what a nightmare you were living in. And I mean, the ball's on you though, to just decide, you know what? I'm not going to just take this. I'm going to do something, you know?
So I moved off base. And from that point forward, I almost pretty much every time had a roommate.
Mm-hmm.
So somehow or another, even if they didn't have to pay, I lived with other people.
Smart.
Yeah, because it continued for years, and some of them actually would show up where I lived off base.
What?
Yeah, this was like super fucked up.
Yeah, I'd say.
Like, it went on this went on for the 3-year tour.
Oh my God. Oh my God. And so I can just imagine how unsafe you must have felt at all times.
Yeah. But I also self-medicated a lot at that point, which we should all be concerned that somebody in law enforcement is basically, anytime I'm not in uniform, I was drinking or sleeping.
Wow. So the depression is real. Like,
yeah. It's, there's so many physical reactions to trauma. Like, people don't understand the physical consequences of PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody who's ever had a chance to look up a book called Body Keeps the Score, it is fascinating. And it's one of the early research on Vietnam veterans, and the physical symptomology. So I had all of it. I started developing migraines, the jaw tension, we carry everything in our upper body.
Right.
So I started having back problems. I, coincidentally also had knee injury that required 2 surgeries. So being on limb due doesn't make you any better of a sailor. So it also makes you a target again. So it was a lot of just inconvenient things that lined up that just didn't make it easier at all. So yeah, between migraines, depression, substance abuse, yeah, I mean, it was a roller coaster, and it basically just got worse, and you just don't have time to recover. Like, you just can't catch a break. And that's the hardest part, because mental health is still frowned upon. Anybody who has a clearance or carries a firearm knows that going to mental health, you're pretty much giving up your badge. So that's why most of them don't seek it. Same with special operations. Look how much everybody's put them on a pedestal. It's really hard to ask them to go to mental health and pretend like something's wrong, or, you know, acknowledge something's wrong, when everybody puts them at the top tier.
So
for so many different communities.
Yeah. And
African American community has a very hard mental health stigma.
Oh, do not get me started. We do not want to go down that rabbit hole.
I can tell that there's a hard stigma because we don't see a lot of applicants. And if we do, we really have to check that there's family buy-in, or they just culturally in their social circle don't get the support they need. So it's definitely a stigma that still needs to be addressed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, so the stigma for mental health care in the military has been around since the dawn of time, I'm sure, and further. And especially, I would imagine, for officers and special ops, right? And then these are people that see some of the hardest things to see and deal with. I mean, I'm talking about even civilian officers seeing some of the most horrible things and dealing with the most horrible people, and yet they don't get mental health. So then we wonder why a lot of these tragedies happen, because these officers are not getting support in a way that they could really use it, you know? And special ops, we wonder why these guys are committing suicide after they come out. Well, because they're not getting the mental health care that they need, because it's frowned upon. There's a stigma, you know? And so, and just like you said, I mean, we could go into detail about how I feel about the African American community and the stigma for mental health care, or the certain barriers to getting the services that they need in certain communities. We could talk about that all day. So I am right there with you. I think it's a necessary conversation, you know, and it's something that we really, I think as women, as female veterans, we really need to support each other and support our sisters with encouraging them to get at least peer support. This is what I do here. And helping each other and seeking that help when we can get it, because unfortunately, I don't think I know anyone who has served that has not seen some type of bullying, racism, sexual harassment, known of a sexual assault, like misogyny, you know, abuse of power, like something, right? And this is within our military. This is, you know, absolutely should not be happening, especially in the 21st century. So I'm really glad that you are sort of voicing this right now, and anyone out there that is not sure if they should pursue mental health care and get some help in this way, definitely do it. Definitely do it.
Yes, absolutely. And if you don't want to go to the medical on base, one organization is Headstrong Project. They will find you a shrink out in town. And vet centers are also not necessarily connected to your military record, meaning you don't have to worry about your clearance. Mm-hmm. So absolutely go check it out and go vent to somebody for a little bit. Can't knock if you don't try it.
That's right. I mean, even if you're not sure, if you're thinking, do I need mental health care? Go talk to somebody. Just have a conversation. Try peer support first. There's a great organization called Veterans Counseling Veterans. I interviewed Ellsworth. He is the founder of that, and I don't usually interview men. So you know that it's a solid organization. If I brought him on, he's really passionate about helping veterans, male and female, and his service is amazing. So I will drop the link for all of these things in the show notes for anyone who wants some additional support. And you can always reach out to the Female Veterans Podcast, and I will always help you in any way that I can. There's a link in the show notes where if you want to connect with me, that you can just drop me your email there, and I'll reach out to you as soon as possible. So I'm going to ask you another question. And my next question for you is, what was the transition to the next base like? How did you leave the toxic base and get to the next base?
My life is so drama filled. So I left the first base on orders to an NCIS school in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, which is Protected Services School. And two things during that: I was assaulted at the range by the instructor, and then was dropped from the course. An investigation was done, because again, I reported, so definitely not going down quietly. They found nothing wrong with my report. However, the Army letter said they did find enough evidence of all the previous things I listed that I was aware of, because I knew other people in security, that the guy still was retired early or whatever. So
that's what he got?
Kind of true, but not true enough,
Oh, so he didn't go to jail. He retired. He had to give up the rest of his career and go retire with like retirement pay and live his life.
Yep.
Like he isn't a criminal.
For reporting, I got dropped on request. And then Hurricane Katrina hit.
Wow.
Later.
Wow. I just need a moment.
Right? Me too.
I need a moment, because I wasn't expecting that. Okay, one assault, then we have two. And your bravery, we have to discuss that for a second. Your bravery of reporting again. Now, I understand why a lot of women don't report. Believe me, I do. But I mean, it's incredible.
I mean, I understand why people don't report. It absolutely sucked. I mean, and the hazing afterward, like, I feel you. That shit is real. There's so many weird different ways they torment you afterward. I can absolutely understand why somebody wouldn't want to go through that, for sure. On the other hand, man, getting that final fuck you is so much fun. And eventually, I promise you will get it. Karma does work.
So I love
the civilian that worked at the Seabees command at Fort Leonard Wood, and the Seabees command actually, because Katrina hit, they had to basically take me on TDY orders because nobody in the Navy was moving anywhere. So I basically got stuck in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, which was miserable. But they also helped me with that reporting. So the civilian secretary who ran the Seabees command and the Seabees leadership, and like all dudes, all old salty Seabee dudes. But seriously, like the best experience. Like they were awesome. I would have stayed in Fort Leonard Wood just to stay at that command. So there's definitely also great experiences and great people that even in 2005 were saying, I believe you, let's do the paperwork. This is the process. We're going to knock this out. And even though like the Army command is like, well, that's not real. That's not happening. However, whatever their answer was, the Navy side handled their business.
That's good to hear. It's really good to hear. I love your energy and I love your like spunk and just going after it. I mean, so I've definitely done a lot of interviews, and like you said, the hazing, and the saddest thing about it, and the and all the mistreatment of the survivor. The saddest thing about it to me is it comes from both men and women on the command. you
Oh,
know?
yeah.
So you think that, you know, a woman would have compassion for what you experience, but a lot of times the cattiness, the claws come out and it gets really catty, even in this male environment, that they are amongst some of the worst people hazing. And it's always like appalling to me, because at very least we should have each other's back. You would think another woman would go, what happened to you? I believe you, but that is not always the case. And then you have to deal with the guys and their particular brand of hazing and slut shaming when you didn't do anything wrong. Right? You were attacked, you were assaulted.
Yeah.
So having to go through that, I definitely understand. I definitely understand why people don't want to do it, and then what it causes. So, in addition to having been violated and having this violent act perpetrated upon your person, then you have emotional violence committed to you by the people who are, again, supposed to be your family, supposed to be having your back, and supposed to be the people that you can count on. And I've heard it time and time again with Kimberly Bailey, that the season 4 premiere, that was heartbreaking what she experienced when people would turn away when she walked down the hallway because the guy was popular on base. And then with Erin Scanlon, who I think she's episode 5 of season 4, what she had to go through when the military took over the investigation and from the civilians, and how she had an airtight case and somehow the guy walked, and how that just destroyed her, and she had to rebuild herself back up. It's just, and I mean, she jumped out of planes. Right? It's not like you're a soft, woman. You're an officer. She jumped out of planes. Like, these things happen, and then you have to deal with the aftermath. And as bad as the act is, the aftermath can be equally as bad. So it's heartbreaking. So was it that CV command that sort of helped you start to begin to heal?
I mean, I wasn't there long enough, and with everything with Katrina and getting new orders, I mean, my entire life turned upside down. My household went to Italy. I was not going to Italy any longer.
Wow.
So, when you're TAD somewhere, I mean, they were a great transitional command, but not long enough to really have impactful relationships. But that did come at my last command, actually.
Okay, so tell me about this last command, because I got to hear something good.
I mean, it gets worse first.
Oh, okay. Well, let's not jump ahead. What happened next?
So I get orders to the John F. Kennedy out of Mayport, an aircraft carrier.
Okay, on a ship. Here we go.
Yeah, and I'm actually super pumped, because how else are you going to make rank at some point except for getting pins?
Gotta go to sea.
Yep. So why else join the Navy? Go to sea. And so I was super pumped about it. Turns out about 1 month into the command that I only had an overseas screening, not a sea duty screening. So once they went through my record, and with everything that had happened to me and was physically deteriorating with me, I couldn't pass the sea duty screening. I got kicked off the ship.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I was partially through my DC and just got my warfare book, and we did one underway, and even the senior chief, and I mean crusty senior chief, Master at Arms, he's like, "You're the first girl I've lost that didn't get pregnant."
Oh.
That say a lot about the old guy's mentality too, though.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, that was heartbreaking, but it was a really positive experience when I was on the ship. I was the only female Master at Arms on the entire aircraft carrier.
Wow.
So I was in a unit full of dudes, and they were all fantastically professional. So it was really, really great experience. And then I transferred to Naval Station Mayport security because I wanted to stay in my rate. And at this point, I was being med boarded. So I actually got kicked off the ship and got my first set of med board orders for the first 6 months set.
Oh, wow. So they're like, all right, you got to go.
I was supposed to go to the air station hospital and hand out basketballs. You know, that's what we call it in our career when you go, you know,
wow.
The LIMDU people, the limited duty people, all just have some kind of generic job to do their medical appointments. But I begged the leadership at Mayport to let me come on, basically just as an additional body, because I was a master at arms. So there's just certain things I'm not allowed to do. So I went to Mayport Security. The master chief and the chief at the time took me on, and they were the tits. Those guys.
That's fantastic.
Enough. I'm still in contact with them to this day. They almost lost their career trying to protect me from the security officer because that command got bad too.
No way. What is it? The ship was good. And you would expect the ship to be a little questionable, but the ship was good, but the base is stateside. Again,
security too. The security officer.
Security. So, wow. So what happened? Tell me. I got it.
This is a civilian security officer. He used to be a Jacksonville Sheriff's Office guy, and from what I understand, got fired. And somehow magically, the government hired him to run security.
Oh, the government hired him. He was unwanted.
About that. And so he had a lot of problem with women, minorities, anybody with any kind of conditions, like anything.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, so it started one of those. And my master chief was Hispanic. So he was the first one to get sent on, what was it called? IA? Individual augmented duty. 26-year master chief gets sent on IA. Anybody ever heard of that? So that's what this guy started pulling. He started sending people on deployments. He started, my chief ended up terminating his shore duty and going back to sea before he retired to get away from the guy.
Wow.
He basically just kept violating my medical orders. So at that point, I'd had 2 knee surgeries. My wrist was in a cast because I kept having these cysts or this joint fluid developing from wrist injuries. Anyway, basically, I'm falling apart, and there's not a lot of things I'm supposed to be doing. I'm assigned to the boat unit. I was a very good boat driver. I trained with the SWIC guy down there. So I was supposed to take the canine guys out to just inspect boats. You know, I'm an extra body. I'm capable of doing that. But no, this security officer had me on the pier moving barricades. I mean, things that should be with a forklift or like filled with water. And so the hazing and stuff he did, like quarterdeck watches, calling me in the middle of the night to have to come on base to stand watch. It got so bad that a couple of the other commands at Mayport even said something to him, to other leaders, and even to medical. So after being there for a little over a year and my second med board came due, I was mentally so broken down that the chief, doc, who was in charge of my medical team, said, like, it's my strongest recommendation that I sign you out with this and you leave the military. I don't think you'll make it. And he was probably right. Like, I didn't have much more left. You know, I mean, it was like command after command. So I felt like I tapped out. So I had a really hard time with how I left, but I know it was right. But there's a grieving period when you leave the military. I mean, everybody, even if you retire, like, you grieve what you know, I mean, for people who had uniform on for 20 years, like, that's all you knew. That's who you've been. So then, like, who are you going to be after that? And I thought I was going to do 20 years. So at the 5-year mark, and I was at the almost 6-year mark. No, it was a hard reality. And it was like, wait, what am I going to do now? Like, I have no idea. I had 30 days to get out. They wouldn't even let me take my terminal. So I got the letter from the Navy, and I had enough time to take a TAPS class with a bunch of dudes retiring. And then at 30 days, all of a sudden, they basically took my ID card and sent me on my way.
Wow. So I'm going to share a story with you. I don't think I've ever shared this on the podcast before, but I'm a disabled veteran, right? I live with Epstein-Barr virus, which I acquired somehow a month and some other things while serving. I don't know. Lifelong illnesses that I have to manage. Um, and I was 23 when this started coming on, right? And so how it began was I kept getting mono. I got mono every year for 3 years in a row. It just never left. I still get it. I haven't gotten it in almost 5 years now, which is a record. Usually happens every 1 to 2 years, if not every year. Since then, right? So mono, if you think mono is like getting hit with a truck, you're exhausted all the time, you have no energy, you have flu-like symptoms, and it lasts for like 3 months. And so you can imagine having this every year means that it's difficult for me to work a normal job, right? So while I was in, though, I was in the pharmacy, and everybody had to send someone to gate guard, right? So I had to go over to the security office and work for them for a little while, right? Well, the pharmacy, because I was learning on the job, so I didn't go to pharmacy school. I learned OJT, which is my favorite way to learn. And but they sent me, since I was the OJT, they sent me, but I had mono. I'd just been diagnosed with mono. So I reported and I told them I had mono. Now, preceding this, I will say that I was in a little trouble. Okay, I had a sort of a reputation, but I hadn't done anything wrong. It's just that I like to go to a lot of underground parties. It was the 90s.
Yeah.
So I hadn't done anything wrong. It's just that I had a reputation, but I just like to go dancing. What? So anyways, this reputation preceded me on the base. And so when I reported to the security office, they decided that they were going to teach me a lesson. So they put me on night duty. Now, I had mono. So I already need to sleep all the time. Instead of sending me second quarters, they sent me to do gate guard duty, and the security office assigned me to nighttime hours. So I was overnight, like starting at midnight.
And that's a quick way to catch a UCMJ. Right. On watch, you know?
Exactly. I felt at the time it was a setup. I'm just going to call it what it is, totally. Because I was not a command favorite because of my nighttime weekend activities. There's more to that story, but I'll tell it another time. Let's just say it ends with me in a meeting with NCIS, but we'll tell that another time. Anyway, this story. So I fall asleep at the gate every single night. And then I made it through that without getting into any trouble. I also had to work the 4th of July festival activities that we had on the base. All the civilians would come. So I was moving barricades, by the way, which made me remember this story when you were telling me that, with the mono, fatigued, and, getting yelled at and picked on and all of these things because I'm not able to do, like, I'm not keeping up. I'm not moving fast enough. I have mono. So eventually what happens is, I think it was right after the 4th of July weekend and a combination of night duty and all of this, that I slept. I went to sleep and I slept for like 24 hours, which meant I slept through my duty.
Oops.
Mm-hmm. So I was, I was AWOL. But I was at my apartment. I had a place off base. I was at my apartment. I just slept and I woke up and I was like, oh my God, I am going to be in so much trouble. So I went to medical. Right? And I'm a little spunky like you. I went to medical and I went to my doctor and I said, hey, I have mono. They've been making me work gate guard duty at night and I fell asleep. And you gotta tell them that I should not be doing this with mono, right? So that was step one. And then I went to the pharmacy and talked to my lieutenant commander, who was new I didn't love him. He was creepy. I didn't like him after a while. But at this moment, he came through and I told him what happened. And they backed me up at medical and they went to security and they were fixing, like, let me tell you, they were fixing for me to go to captain's mast when I walked in that door. Oh, and they were not happy when my lieutenant commander came to bat for me and that medical back. They were like really sad. Like they were unhappy that I was not going to go before the captain and that my career was going to be ruined. Right. And it was just, and I felt that energy of they really wanted to string me up. And I just was what? I was a 23-year-old girl who liked to go dancing at night. That's it. Why? Rumors, So I definitely understand that and how toxic it can be. And by the way, that was in the security department with the cops. So I'm just saying. But let's jump back to you and talk about your transition out of the military. You said that you had a TAPS class. Did you feel like that helped prepare you for civilian life at all?
Oh God, no. Zero. No. Like worse than no. I'm pretty sure I was the only female. So when Men's Warehouse came and talked about suits and dressing to impress in an interview and all the dude stuff, they didn't even excuse me. And most of the people were retiring. And this was 2007, so, I mean, PTSD wasn't a conversation. MST wasn't a conversation. VA, so I got an administrative separation under medical conditions not warranting disability. That's what my DD-214 says.
Wow.
So I also got like a big fat goose egg. Like I didn't get the DOD rating or any of that shit they have nowadays, or like a nurse person who helps you like transition out. None of it. Basically, you're just falling apart, and all of a sudden the Navy said, yeah, we're not dealing with that anymore.
Just peace out. Bye.
Yeah. So I tried the GI Bill college thing right away. Thankfully, my parents were really beating the drum on, they're definitely education snobs because they never had those chances. My mom never got to go to college, so if there was college anywhere and an opportunity, she was going to drag me there herself. So they were always beating that drum, and I definitely started seizing the opportunity and figuring out how to use the VA system in any capacity. So I did the GI Bill, and then I filed for a VA claim, like mental health. Somebody helped me with something. So I did that. That obviously took a while. So for the first year, while I'm waiting for the VA to do that, not like you have any other income. So I waitressed and stuff. Was a restaurant manager, and I was dating a Navy guy from the base. We're married now, but at the time we were just dating, and he was getting stationed over on the other coast. So I moved over there with him. We weren't married, so had to downsize our household to make it work for the weight capacity for a single guy, basically. So while I'm doing my VA process, I moved to the other coast over to Seattle. And then over there, discovered this magical thing called vocational rehab. Voc rehab through the VA. So if you have, 40% or above, or 10%, depending on what it is, absolutely check it out. It was so worth going through Voc rehab. Granted, the first thing they sent me to hair school. So I'm actually a cosmetologist.
Wow.
Yeah, it just turns, I don't have the personality for it at all. Or the physical injuries that allow me to stand long periods of time. But that was a very safe industry if you think about it. So from what I'd been in a male-dominated, badge, loved wearing camo, like all that stuff, I went in the absolute opposite direction. Like, there's not a lot of straight men. Other than that, it's a lot of women. Like, let's just stereotype what it is. I went in a really safe industry. But it was horrible. So, but my, then I ended up getting married. My husband ended up deploying. Fast forward, we moved to another base because, then there's the military spouse life I'm part of now. And I'd move over to Syracuse, New York, where his family lives because he's going on a forward deployment for 2 years. So I'm like, I'm not staying on the West Coast for 2 years by myself. Um, so I moved to Syracuse, and I can't find a job as a hairdresser. So I'm an unemployed military spouse who can't get a job cutting hair. So I went back to voc rehab, and the voc rehab counselor's like, WTF did you go to hair school for in the first place?
Yeah.
And then she looked at like all my stuff, and I had an associate's degree from before I joined, and she's like, just go back to school. I'm like, okay, well, what schools are around here? She's like, Syracuse University. I'd never heard of it. So I applied there, and I had a horrible GPA, so I actually had to start at like the like night school part to kind of earn my way in. So I definitely didn't start with glory at all. And it was a fantastic experience. So my turnaround in my life and my story was going to Syracuse. Their student veterans club and even professors. So I had a German professor who noticed me falling apart. I had issues with like doors slamming, cell phones ringing. So there are certain things that would really set me off, and I would have full meltdowns. Like I cried in public, and I absolutely hated it. It was one of my biggest things for anxiety. Like I had no control over it. And she kept saying, go find your people. Like you're a veteran, you need to be with your people. So I finally went to a veterans club, and she wasn't wrong. She absolutely wasn't wrong. So from there, I actually had like other veterans and courses. Then it turned almost like into the military experience I didn't have.
Right.
Friendship, loyalty, respect, like none of that bullshit. So then, one of the guys even went study abroad with me. I didn't even have to go abroad by myself. So it was a really cool experience. Really changed my academic plan too. So that's how I fell in love with service dog industry. One of the other girls was getting a service dog, and I looked at my husband. He just retired that year. I'm like, you need one of those. So when I did the study abroad that summer, he went and got a service dog. And the concept of treating PTSD and trauma through that, or through alternative treatments other than, severely medicating somebody, was fascinating. And I always loved canines. So I threw a full ride to another program away and applied to grad school at Syracuse to go into public administration and policy, focusing specifically on canine industry from a military side and from a disability access side. And that's where my love for the service dog industry was born, and my turnaround happened. And I've been in the service dog world ever since.
Wow, that's beautiful. And so tell me, when did you decide that you were going to start your own organization? Was it right then, or did you work in the industry for a while and then start it?
So I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do in the industry. So my focuses were in two very different directions. One was special operations dogs, so that like military working dogs, but the top tier side, and then public access law and disability rights. So basically invisible injuries and how they're perceived, and also how they're supported from an insurance aspect, from a policy aspect, from a funding, public health. So really the nerdy stuff. So I dabbled in it. I was hired at an organization in Florida and built them up to being the largest national provider of service dogs. Wow. And it was a huge learning experience. I started from straight out of college, entry level, doing applications, to becoming director of operations of an entire construction of $7 million property. So it was trial by fire. It was really exciting. Definitely learned, some hard lessons. But from there, I met, and he's currently my CEO, actually. So I met him at that first job. He was a board member and a graduate. And then when he got a job in DC, he stole me away from Florida to come up to DC and work, building an entire veterans program for a national organization and start lobbying. And I had never done the policy side. So I got to work in DC for a year and, really speak on veterans policy and learn, the behind the scenes on how everything worked. It was awesome. Again, a
Sounds
lot
awesome.
of good and bad lessons learned. We'll just put it that way. And at the end of that, we both left that job too. And we almost joined another organization, and then somebody said, why do you guys keep building everybody else's? That's what we basically become known for. Like, we were building programs. So then we got stolen away and build programs. So then somebody's like, why are you doing this for other people and not for yourself? And we're like, not a bad concept. We really should. So it's almost like somebody hitting us on the forehead. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how Leashes was born. That and a desire to clean up the industry. Right around the time when I got the DC job, one of the graduates from my first program committed suicide. So that was basically the organizations and my 100% success rate gone. You know, like, not only was this like a numbers thing, because it completely shattered the illusion that they can save everyone.
Yeah. Wow.
But it's also someone, you know, personally, like, we have skin in the game when we train these veterans with these dogs. Like, it's personal every time.
I can imagine.
So to lose someone was like a really hard blow, and we really wanted to figure out, like, you know, I mean, I fell through the cracks basically in a way in the military. Yeah. I wanted to be like, how are veterans falling through the cracks in the veteran service space, and then specifically in the service dog space? Like, where did something go wrong? What wasn't done right? And that was like the underlying sad side of why Leashes of Valor was formed. It was something needed to be done because these are our brothers and sisters committing suicide. And
absolutely.
It was personal.
It is personal. It's personal for all of us. I think I might have mentioned before that that's part of the reason I started this podcast too, because I read an article and it said that the suicide rates for female veterans were 250% higher than their civilian counterparts. And I went, 250%? That's not like 10%. That's not like 20%. That's not really? Even 100%. Like, I'm like, that is ridiculous. And I started thinking there are more and more female veterans. And I'm like, which means there are more and more people going to be dying. And I'm like, something has got to be done. We've got to do something, you know? And then I thought, well, I'm going to do something. So I definitely appreciate that. It is. And I hate, like, every time I read about a veteran dying, or the ones that take their lives in front of like VA hospitals, particularly, you know, I'm like, when is the government gonna wake up and get it? Like, what is it gonna take? Is it gonna take Fort Hood for them to go, okay, let's look at our bases and see what's going on? There's toxic bases, there's toxic leadership. When is it gonna be enough that veterans are coming out dying? And it's not all because they saw things at war. It's not all only that.
No, absolutely not. I mean, there's atrocities at home. How many veterans have to deal with another service member's suicide? Exactly. We saw a lot of suicides as a law enforcement officer. Anybody who works at Dover, anybody who was part of the old guard, like, you feel that tap swaying, like, it chips away at you. You can't tell me working there, aside from, the standards that you were held up to, like, that takes an emotional toll. So you don't have to go to combat for being exposed to things that are against the normal human experience. Let's put it that way.
And then there's the term that you coined, or mentioned, I should say, so eloquently, moral injury.
Big time. Like, we all grow up with certain fibers from, what our families and cultures instilled in us. So, no two people will come out of any experience the same.
No.
And even our PTSD will be different, based on, social factors, childhood influences. People who have previous trauma are more susceptible to having even more severe PTSD. So there's a lot of variables, but I mean, the worst is that the military doesn't even talk about it that much.
Right.
Or they downplay it in a PowerPoint. That's not constructive.
Yeah, and they don't really want everyone, like the mainstream public, to understand how serious the problem is, you
I mean,
know.
anybody on social media should be able to get a pretty good grasp on how serious it
Hmm.
is.
Thank God. I mean, social media can be horrible, we all know, but it does have a really bright spot because look at Vanessa Guillen and her story. Social media has really helped her, or Tai Ohu, that's her name, how you
Mhm.
pronounce it. And what's happening with her is absolutely horrifying. That girl should be getting mental health services, which she's not. She's being held in the brig after she is had a like a flashback or something, and and even her boyfriend, who I guess the story goes maybe she pulled a gun on him, and he
Basically domestic, and
yes,
basically got
and
triggered.
she got triggered because she didn't receive the mental help she needed initially from an assault. So in my mind, I imagine, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I imagine she got triggered, had some sort of flashback, pulled a gun. Even the boyfriend says, she's no danger. But here she is in the brig, languishing, when she should be getting help. And oh, where's the guy who assaulted her? Do we know what happened to him? Probably living his life somewhere.
Or at
Just
another
living.
command doing it again. Like
Yeah,
we also
yeah.
have to worry about the repeat.
Mm-hmm.
Like not only are you not potentially not punishing somebody, but one toxic. Let's just go with sailor because we were both Navy.
Yeah.
One toxic sailor doing that, going from command to command. So if you think about that E9 that did that to me on the first command, how many people did he do that to in his career? How much talent did we lose for one person continuously being allowed to do that kind of behavior? Because it's usually not a one-off.
No. Because once
I
they
can
get away with it
all my
once,
experiences, it was never just a one-off.
no, no. They get away with it once and then they get emboldened to do it again because they know how easy it is to perpetrate that violence against another person because of something they're lacking within themselves or some mental health issue that they are having themselves. So then they realize it's easy. So then they keep doing it. And even when I was on the base, there was a rapist loose on the base. I heard of girls getting attacked, and then it just got really quiet. You know,
Is
and
that
it's
nuts?
yeah. So it's just nuts. I mean, I can remember the fear going from just the barracks from the car to the barracks at night while that guy was on the loose. They couldn't catch him. So and I think it was like 3 months, I think. So it's ridiculous. And then here's another layer to this. So the women that I talked to on here, these women have these experiences, which I'm sure you can attest to. And they may serve 1 year in the military and have it an assault and got put out, or 5 years or 10 years. But whatever the length of time they served in the military, it's nearly 3 times longer than that for them to recover, if ever. Tara, she was on season 3 and she served 1 year. And she wasn't assaulted, thank God, but she was severely stalked and harassed by a superior to the point where she had a nervous breakdown. And she was 19 years old, max.
Mm-hmm.
Max. Ended her dream of a military career. Ended her dream. Okay? And not only that, she spent the next 25 years trying to heal and lead a normal life. 25 years for 1 year of military service.
Yeah, I'm at 18 years since the first incident.
Yeah, so it's appalling. It's appalling. And things have to be done. So thankfully, these days, there are so many of us doing things, trying to create this positive change. Like Aaron has legislation in the works. And I can't wait to have her back in the spring to find out what's going on with what she's doing, right? Because we have to make noise. And the only way is through sometimes social media and through legislation, right? To
Love
make
it.
these changes. So, and a great change that you're doing right now is helping people with service animals, with dogs.
Yeah.
So, how you guys created your own organization. Now, what were the beginning days of that like for you? How did you really get into your flow?
I think we definitely jumped into the deep end of the Shark Tank. We went hard quick. Because we left the organization in DC, we had we had a really serious Rolodex, and we had a lot of people immediately support us. So we were really fortunate with that. We bought a property. So the 3 founders are all 3 veterans, my CEO, Jason, my husband, and myself. So we're basically we used our own funds to buy the property, start setting everything up, and start getting dogs, hiring a trainer, sending people to school. So we were setting all these things up simultaneously. Because we are a residential program, so we actually house the veteran on property. They have their own cottage, so that they have their own space. But it is basically like teaching someone with a prosthetic for the brain. They do go through pretty rigorous training while they're here, because it is a pretty serious responsibility to give somebody a tool that, in some situations can literally be life or death. So we take it pretty serious, and we want to get eyes on the person. And we want to make sure they leave with all the knowledge to be set up for success. So the first year was spent spending money, fundraising, and getting everything into place. We were founded in April of 2017, and we had our first veteran going through the program in January of 2018. So we already had 5 dogs in training by then, because most of our dogs are with us for almost 15 to 18 months usually.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we're 3 years old. We have graduated over 10 veterans in this program. We have currently over 20 dogs in training. We are a team of 6. The founders are unpaid. We're veterans donating our time to make this happen. And then, of course, we have, a trainer for the talent and social media marketing and all those things. So yeah, that's us in a nutshell.
So I guess my next question absolutely has to be, if I'm a veteran who wants your help, how do I go through your process? What do I do?
So you go on our social media channels, which is Leashes of Valor on Facebook, Instagram, any of those, and DM us, or you can go on our website, leashesofvalor.org, and ask for an application. They're not just downloadable, like you actually have to make contact. So we can kind of start keeping an eyeball on people inquiring. I'm not just gonna let you ghost on us. And we also like to talk and coach the person through the application. So we're usually, one of us is available for a phone call or something to, there's questions. People have questions. It's like Match.com for a dog. So you're gonna spend a lot of time together. You need to make sure it's right. The biggest criteria for us is post 9/11. We asked for an honorable discharge, but everything is on a case-by-case basis, because I know the military doesn't always get it right. So don't let that deter you. We will absolutely entertain applicants. And the diagnosis of PTSD, TBI, MST, or any of the affiliating. I know, like, back in the day, they also gave, like, personality disorder or depressive,
Right.
I've seen how diagnoses and processes can keep people from getting resources. Please don't think just doesn't fit in one of the 3 wickets that you are not going to get a service dog from us. Our biggest criteria really in the end is somebody putting skin in the game. You got to be really vulnerable and do a lot of figuring out where you're at in order to go in public with a dog, because it's going to start making things public that before nobody saw about you. As soon as that dog is next to you, people anywhere will know something is wrong with you. That's actually a big step for many, especially if you have MST. It's not as glorious to say I was raped in the military as it is to say, I have a Purple Heart. That's so right. There's shame involved, and overcoming a lot of those barriers on where you're at with your injury and your recovery, and being self-aware on why you need a dog. Like, what's your next step? So a perfect example is Justin and Tango, one of our graduates. He's a farmer in Montana. He's a Marine combat vet. And we talked about it all the time. We questioned, why does a farmer with 10,000 acres in Montana need a service dog? Like, you have the life we all want. No human, right. Like sky country, like take me over there, baby.
Beautiful.
But he was super self-aware about, like, I struggle with my mind wandering when I'm basically driving the combine. And I go down memory lane and I can't be there. I cannot handle going back to where I was. And he said, and those usually leave me with an anger. And he works with his dad. It's family farm. It's like 4th or 5th generation. He said, I let the anger out on my dad, and he doesn't deserve that. And we have a family business to run. Like, I'm messing with my children's livelihood if this continues. So, like, that level of, these are my needs. These are some of the things I'm aware of where I need help. Let's talk about next steps. And absolutely, like, him and Tango ride that tractor and combine all day long. So, it was a learning experience for us, but they're one of the most successful service dog teams I've ever seen because of the amount of work the veteran put into it. Like, this is not it's not a free bicycle and you're just going to be on your way and it doesn't require anything. Because to go out in public with a dog definitely requires a lot more, because, again, your injury is visible.
Wow. I never thought of it that way, but it's so true. Everyone, if you're in the grocery store with a pet, people look. I look when I see, of course, I'm usually like, that dog is so cute because I'm a dog lover. But it's true. I actually met a gentleman, another vet. I was at the doctor at the VA and he came in with a pig and it was a service animal. It was the cutest thing I've ever seen. It acted just like a dog. Let me pet it. Loved me, that thing. And I thought, man, maybe I want a pig, but I have a rabbit, but it doesn't go everywhere with me. It's just sort of at home.
And that's one of the biggest things I see a lot of people freaking out. They get these sea lawyer information about, well, service dog will cure you, Like, I heard this from this guy and this master chief told me this that one time and he sprinkled salt on it and then it was all gone.
Right.
Some people can really, all you need is an emotional support animal, and don't let that term deter you from the benefit you can receive. It's owning a dog or a rabbit. Like, the value of just having that animal, that responsibility to get out of bed in the morning, something that figures out if your heart rate is accelerating, you're not alone, the trust level, you can tell that animal anything, they will not talk. There's so many, and then nightmares. Usually by intuition, a lot of these animals, do affect your sleep in a positive way. So, there's a lot to be said that even if you don't have access to a service dog, it doesn't necessarily mean that, there isn't other solutions out there, or that a service dog is the best solution for you. Some people will benefit just from having it at home and not in public. I know women who are in career positions that don't want to be seen as, they feel more vulnerable by showing a disability. I mean, it's a horrible mentality to feel that way, but I can understand why they don't.
Yeah. I think the beautiful thing is the compassion that you have for all of these people. It's really, really beautiful. And I just have one more question for you before we wrap it up. My last question for you is, what advice would you give to your veteran sisters coming behind you?
I mean, gosh, first of all, don't go it alone. And especially, we just hinted on social media, like, find your groups, find your people. My professor wasn't wrong. Find your people. And if one group isn't right, like, not the first pair of jeans you try on is gonna, work just right. Like keep experimenting. I've left Facebook groups before because they were too toxic or they were too, one topic that wasn't my thing. But find your people, don't go it alone. And you wrote that check like everybody else. You served. How they chose to cash that check in, that's not your responsibility. So you showed up. So go get your resources. You earned those. And I mean, from any aspect, any organization that you're eligible for, don't be shy to ask for help. That's the thing that got me out of the weeds, honestly, is finding my people and using my resources.
Beautiful. Very, very solid advice. And I belong to a lot of Facebook groups as well, and I can't advocate for that enough. I mean, if you know my story, you know that I was very nearly homeless and I had to rely on my friends to help me get a job and get on my feet. And then this company that I started working for hired veterans. And it was at a time where it wasn't necessarily the best thing to have on your resume was being a veteran. And they took me on and I was successful there. And when I got on my feet, something was still missing. And then a veteran crossed my path that needed help signing up for medical benefits, and I knew how, so I helped, and that felt great. And then for somehow the universe or God or whatever you believe in kept planting veterans in my path that I could help, and it really changed my life. And it turned out that would be the advice I would give to a veteran who was suicidal that would cross my path. I would say, hey, find a veteran to help. Join a veteran group, help somebody. It will make you feel better. That's what worked for me. And lo and behold, I'd see them keeping on and they'd join a group, and I'd see, like on MySpace back in the day or Facebook when it became that, right? That they were helping other veterans and they were doing better. And I mean, even if it was just a veteran friend that I knew from high school who I knew was having mental health issues, and I would just be like, hey, did you take your meds today? For a few months until they got on. It just made me feel so much better. So I agree with your advice. You cannot discredit getting into that. You might run in the far direction of anything military, or because of your experience in the military, and you do that for a while. I know I certainly did it. I didn't want anything to do. I didn't tell anyone I was a veteran for a good minute. But the reality is when you find people who understand what you went through, who understand that life, who understand the terminology, the language, the culture, it just does something for you that I really can't put into words. So we are a community, the Female Veterans Podcast, and there are so many communities out there for female veterans now that I encourage you to find one to be a part of. I support that advice 1,000%. Thank you for it. And I also want to thank you so much, Danique, for sharing your time with me and your story and being so relatable and so honest and open with everything that you experienced. It's just been such a pleasure to talk to you and to make this connection. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And I truly, truly enjoyed sharing the good and the bad. There's a lot of positivity out there, and realistically, I wouldn't be literally sitting right here doing this if the journey hadn't taken me that way. So, no grit, no pearl, baby.
I love that. I love your energy. So again, I want to say thank you so much. And for sure, we take the good, we take the bad. It's all lessons. It all put us on the path to where we are now. And if you're not where you want to be, you'll get there. Don't give up. Keep trying. Keep going for it. You can get there. Just know you can. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. If you want to connect with Danique and you're interested in Leashes of Valor, Danique, will you tell us one more time your website?
It's leashesofvalor.org. And we're also on all the socials.
Great. So you can find her anywhere. And I, of course, will put her information in the show notes, which is the description of the episode. And also, if you want to connect with me, you can find me there. And if you like what you heard today, make sure to give me a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, which used to be iTunes, and or on Spotify or wherever you're listening to this. And stay tuned for my new video series that will be on exclusively the Veterans channel, where you can also listen to this podcast. And it will be called Women Warrior Stories. So check that out. It's coming out in the next few weeks. And I'll see you around on social media. You know where to find me. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you so much. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you next time.